What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, FightfulSelect.com Retro Review. We just happened to be in the same clothes as we were for our Money in the Bank show. We said, you know what? That was a good show. Let's dress exactly the same and definitely don't film them on the same day. We wouldn't want to film them on the same day. So here we are. We're talking the first WCW Monday Nitro. Warren, off the air, you said, how much mileage can we get out of a 45-minute show? I think we can get 45 minutes out of it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There's a lot to talk about. I mean, the history here is so rich. There's so much stuff going on. This was, anyway, I don't want to get too much into it, but this was a lot of fun to, this is exactly the type of thing when you do retro reviews where you're like, let's look at this point in time, this crucial moment in wrestling history. 30 years later, you look at it and you're like, ooh, man, there's a lot of stuff that happened since.
WCW Nitro was the most important thing, I think, to happen to competitive wrestling. Without Nitro, WCW's on Saturday nights, even if they're on a different night, it doesn't just quite capture the same magic that head-to-head Monday night went. That was so special. To the point to where you hear Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff even kind of downplay the ratings that were involved back then. They were like, oh, people always say 10 million people were watching. He goes, a lot of those people were the same people counted twice because they were flipping back and forth to Raw and Nitro. But before this, WCW was Saturday night, 6:05. And I loved that too. If I was at home, I was in elementary school, man. I was like 8, 9 years old. I'm watching that stuff. Maybe Zorro's on before or after. I don't know. I don't know what the hell's on there before or after. I know Zorro was at one point. But it was WCW Saturday night. And all their big matches, and I say big matches, sometimes they had big matches, were reserved for pay-per-view. But Nitro hit. And Nitro changed a lot of things because at that time, WWF was not exactly putting on the level of matches that we see today on their TV, Warren.
No, and you could argue that it wasn't putting the matches on the level of what Nitro would be doing just a couple of months after that. I mean, it was still very much big man wrestling, and it's been talked about a lot. The more cartoonish aspect of it that took a lot away from the in-ring action. The rudiments of sports entertainment were there. It was a shift for the better, because those of us who did want to see some wrestling, something exciting, well, there was for once a true alternative to it, where you would get big matches for free, because WWF still had the same business plan. Your television was made. Your television shows were made to get people to buy tickets to the local show. That was how you do it, or the pay-per-view. You wouldn't give away the big matches on TV, but you did here.
Well, let's take a look at WWF shows before this. Now, it's worth noting WWF Raw was preempted on this night. The first ever WCW Nitro, which took place, September 4th, 1995. Raw was preempted. But the prior week, the show that aired was Men on a Mission winning an enhancement match, 1-2-3 Kid jobbing out the Brooklyn Brawler, The Undertaker beating Tatanka, who was far past his prime, at least in WWE. The man now known as PCO defeating, how about this one, Scotty 2 Hotty.
Wow.
Who was an enhancement wrestler. And you had Diesel and the British Bulldog against Men on a Mission. You could look at that and say, okay, Taker and Tatanka, maybe. You knew Tatanka wasn't winning that match. Diesel and Bulldog against Men on a Mission, maybe. Maybe. Because we're talking about King Mabel at this point. He was in the middle of a huge push. They had filmed that same taping, a much bigger show to air the following week. You had the Bulldog against Razor Ramon, Smoking Guns beating Rad Radford and Brooklyn Brawler. Not a lot there. Isaac Yankem winning an enhancement match, but Shawn Michaels against Sid for the Intercontinental title aired the week after WCW. Then the next tapings they ran, how about some of these? Taker versus Bulldog. Smoking Guns beating Owen and Yoko for the tag titles. Razor versus the 1-2-3 Kid in a grudge match. Owen Hart and Yokozuna and the British Bulldog against Diesel, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. And then a cage match with Bret Hart in it. You think that WWF didn't see and say, yeah, let's maybe up it from 1-2-3 Kid beating the Brooklyn Brawler.
Yeah, for sure. And it was really a question of shots being fired, especially since like on this Nitro, I know we're going to get into it, but Hulk Hogan wrestled on TV, like on live TV in a main event, which is still something that was very, very, very rare. And something that because I was mostly a WWF fan and was a little harder for us to get our eyeballs on WCW programming at the time. But we weren't used to seeing Hulk Hogan wrestle on free TV. He'd come in, he'd cut his promos, and he'd, all right, see you tomorrow or next week, boys. But I mean, this was something special. And it's interesting that you pulled that up, and, you could tell like straight off the bat. So, WWE management or WWF management was like, no, okay, we have to do something, and we have to do something right now because they are not kidding around in Atlanta anymore.
You want to talk about the heights in which this created? Well, let's do a little analysis right here. Running unopposed, this show drew a 2.5 rating. Now, why am I bringing up ratings, especially as it compares to today? Rating is a little bit different than viewership. A lot of people say a 2.5 and they go, 2.5 million people. That's not what that means. It is a percentage of the viewer. The finger poke of doom, which many considered the end of WCW, or the beginning of the end, that did go head-to-head with Mick Foley winning the WWF Championship, a huge moment. The finger poke of doom did a 5.0 against Mick Foley winning the title. This ran unopposed and did a 2.5. So you look at how instrumental this period of pro wrestling was, and you really can't underscore it, italicize it, bold it anymore. It was crucial. It was integral. And a lot of that stems from that conversation where Eric Bischoff was trying to go to Ted Turner, and he's told it before. He was going to Ted Turner to try to convince Ted Turner to let him do a business deal with, I think, Rupert Murdoch, who is a rival of Ted Turner's. And he wanted this deal, I think it was maybe in China or overseas somewhere, to help WCW turn a profit. And while Eric was there, Ted goes, hey, what do we need to do to compete with WWE? Bischoff says, prime time. And Ted goes, yeah, how about Monday? Let's give him Monday. And Bischoff's like, oh, hail. And the rest is history. And I think Bischoff made some damn good moves and put together a damn good first show for Nitro. As I looked at this, I said, man, they're doing a lot of the right things, except Mongo McMichael.
I'm glad you pointed that out. No, it's really, it's an embryo, right? It's the baby. And you saw all the elements that would define WCW as we'd go along, for good and ill, but for a lot of good as well. And it's important to point out, and I'm sure when you say that this period was crucial, how essential this moment was. It wasn't just important for WCW. If you've listened to Eric Bischoff talk at this period in time, WCW was hemorrhaging money. It was a losing venture. It was the ridicule of the Turner family. So of course it was crucial for WCW, but it was crucial for pro wrestling. I'm not sure that the new generation would have carried WWF into the new millennium had it not been for this stretch of competition, which has been so crucial, like you said, to getting us even up to where we are today. It's instrumental. I don't think that wrestling could have survived with a single product like WWE like that.
Let's talk about how, pardon my French, fucking miserable Steve Mongo McMichael was. He lasted 8 months on commentary before they said, we got to get you in the ring because there's no way you can be worse at that than this. And boy, were they surprised.
Oh, boy.
He calls, One, on TV in 1995, he used the term "dicking around in the dirt." He said that on TV.
Yep. And his first handshake to Bobby the Brain Heenan, at first, he has one of those buzzer pranks in his hand. And it still boggles my mind. It's like, why did he do that? And did Bischoff know he was going to do
Probably not. I'm going to ask I'm going to ask Eric about that. I'm going to ask him at some point. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, Mongo, why? We're going to ether Mongo throughout the duration of this show. I love this intro. It brought back such positive memories. The song and everything.
The projections on the building. And
yes.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Yeah.
That was so different than everything, especially WCW was doing at the time. Speaking of the Mall of America, they got some criticism for the beach stuff and the some of the outdoor things they did. I like this. I like different. Give me a different setting. Give me a different venue. Give me the poolside stuff. Give me this. I thought this was cool. It made it look full. It made it look like people were stopping and were interested in it.
There you go.
It projected probably what I imagined WCW wanted to project at that point, Warren.
It was just like, it felt grassroots is what it felt like. It's like we're right in the midst of people, and it felt intimate enough, how they had it set up, that you had crowds of people all around, and it was well lit as well, which is still not something, was still something that was, I wouldn't say fairly new, but was still, still a new style of production as far as wrestling matches went. But yeah, I mean, it just felt like, look, we're the people's wrestling promotion. We're right in here with you, folks. And by the way, why don't you drop on over to Pasta Mania and have a dish of marinara sauce?
We will be talking about that. With the good, there came bad. Why couldn't they have bought a new canvas? This thing was dirty as hell. You can tell it when they pan out. I'm like, all right, Mongo, I agree. Somebody was dicking around in the dirt and then rolled around in that ring. So I understood, and I was like, all right, maybe Mongo's ahead of the game. By the way, why do he have his dog there?
I don't understand. You tell me. And
the devil.
I had a little costume on, and the dog was like falling asleep, and I didn't understand. At the end, the dog was literally like closing its eyes while Mongo was shouting in its ear. I was like, can you imagine what kind of lifestyle this dog has at home if Mongo McMichael is shouting at the top of his lungs right in his ears, and he's falling asleep? He's like, I can only imagine. Poor dog.
This was sad, man. Anyway, oh, by the way, Mongo calls Heenan Bobby Hernia.
Oh my God. They tried, I'm sure Eric Bischoff said he has a little production meeting with Heenan and Mongo, and it's like, what would be really nice? It'd be really cool. It's like if you guys were like the new Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. Bobby Heenan's like, well, I'm already Bobby Heenan. Yeah, but if you were the new Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, like, take some jabs at each other. Be witty. How about some banter, guys? Have some banter with each other. Just banter.
Yes.
And man, Mongo is not the man for witticisms, especially when he pulls out a hand buzzer to start off the relationship. Poor Bobby Heenan.
I thought that Brian Pillman facing Jushin Thunder Liger was the perfect match to kick off Monday Nitro. And I won't bullshit you guys. We're filming this February 22nd, 2019. Yeah, I almost said 2009. This probably won't even go up on Select until September. I think, and I know that Rev Pro tried to. Somebody's got to do a Brian Pillman Jr. versus Jushin Thunder Liger match. It just makes too much sense. They're tied together in history. And this was a part of that history, including Mongo McMichael calling Bobby the Brain Bobby the Stain during their match. This piece of shit.
Oh, he's so bad. He is so bad. This was actually a rematch, right, from their Super Brawl 92 match, which was phenomenal. Like, it's really one of the best matches in the history of WCW. This wasn't exactly it, but I mean, what was interesting to see here, and you've heard Eric Bischoff hammer this home time and time again, he wanted to put smaller guys from Japan, international from Mexico in the ring, doing crazy stuff that we weren't used to seeing in North America as a way to distinguish Nitro / WCW from WWF. And what does he do? Starts off the match, yes, flying Brian Pillman against one of the greatest light heavyweights in New Japan history. So, I mean, this, as far as it, no, it didn't rise to the expectations that a Pillman and Liger match might have in your mind. But as far as a statement, as a programming statement, this is how we're going forward. We're going to showcase guys like this. It was really interesting. It was really interesting to just put it in times like, wow, okay, from the get-go, this is what Nitro wanted to aspire to be.
I liked this match. I gave it a 6 out of 10, even though they were not on the same page with that head scissors takeover at the beginning. And Nick Patrick not counting the pin on a surfboard is the true yin and yang of WCW, because you got this great move, but Nick Patrick screwing everything up. Figures.
Yeah, that's it. It started early for Nick Patrick as well.
Oh, yeah. He was terrible. I never liked him. He would lay flat on his back and then physically slide his hand underneath. Now, I know that a couple of refs have told me, oh, well, that's how they check. Yeah, that's also how you push a man's shoulder off the mat, you ass. Nick Patrick was bad.
He was.
He seemed to make the match more about himself than the wrestlers a lot of times. Both men spill over the top rope and it picks up. Pillman suplexes Liger over the top rope and then dives from the top buckle onto Liger. After a superplex, a really nice one, Pillman drop kicks Liger out of midair. And the spots here get even crazier, especially for American wrestling in 1995. There's a super Frankensteiner from Liger, a tornado DDT from Pillman, and then the pins out of nowhere. I would have preferred that pin to have been off of a big move. But this was a great way to set the tone that WCW Nitro was going to be different than WWE or WWF. Because quite frankly, Shawn Michaels wasn't even doing necessarily this. You had him, Owen, and 1-2-3 Kid maybe doing this type of stuff. Maybe. And they weren't doing Super Hurricane Ranas.
No, they were not.
The best spot I remember seeing that year in WWF was months after this, when I think Marty Jannetty did the Super Power Bomb at Survivor Series on Candido. And that was it.
And, just again, as a moment in time of seeing moves that you're not used to seeing that much on North American television, just the tornado DDT had Bischoff do a what a maneuver. It wasn't what a maneuver what he said, but he did do one of these like, oh, what a great move. And then Bobby Heenan just lets him do his spiel, and Bobby Heenan just smoothly goes in. He says, he DDT'd that man off the second rope. Well, and there you go. It's just basic. Now you just sit back and you're like, you take a moment and you're like, well, that's a tornado DDT. But back then, like, even Bischoff was like, wow, okay, not quite sure how to call this. It's a DDT off the second rope, Eric.
Yes. That's a pretty simple way to call it.
There you go.
It's time. Pasta Mania. Did you ever have it? Did you ever try it?
Oh, no. You kidding me? If there's one thing that's good about living in Canada, is that we can sift through all the American bullshit. We have filters here. No, I never had the chance to do it, but this was above just, ordering Hulk Hogan's pasta. He had a restaurant. He had a restaurant opened in the Mall of America, and it was hilarious when Eric Bischoff at first, when he was, Hogan is there and he has tons of kids around him and he's signing autographs, and Eric Bischoff says, Michael Jordan has a steakhouse. Hulk Hogan has a pasta stand in the food court.
He sure does, Warren. Oh, brother. If I'm Hogan, I'm re-releasing these shirts and trying to get some more money out of this. People would ironically buy these.
For sure.
They're more likely at this stage to buy a Pastamania shirt than a Hulkamania shirt, dare I say.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Pasta will never be racist. Ever. Pasta will never do that to you. Man.
Can we talk about the story of Pastamania really quick?
Yeah, of course we can. That's why we're here.
God, Dad, you know, like maybe a lot of you know this.
Of course.
But the George Foreman grill was first offered to Hulk Hogan,
who wasn't home.
He wasn't home, according to the story, because they had the same agent. He and George Foreman, They had the same agent, and he wasn't home to pick up the phone. And he instead, so his agent was like, "Well, I'll call George," and George picked it up. And then I think there was something about a meatball maker.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, that Hogan threw into, and that never took off. So this is actually like his second venture in trying to get into that lucrative superstar food money.
Do you know, and dare I say I am an expert segue man. Do you know how badly I wish I could hear Mongo saying, Arn Anderson ain't got no balls, but Hulk Hogan sure does. You need the Hulk Hogan Meatball Mania Maker. Dumbass. I remember hearing Mongo say stuff like, if you don't like this, you're dumber than dirt. I was like, man, I needed him to segue to that so much. So badly. I need Mongo McMichael's Meatball Mania Maker segues. But I didn't get them.
I was even able to track down a menu, Sean, from that day.
Really?
A beautiful menu that has Hulk Hogan drawn on top of the menu, a line drawing as if it was, like a junior in high school who drew Hogan holding up 2 plates of steaming pasta. You can tell they're steaming because there's little squiggly lines on top of them. It's the grand opening of the Hulkster's favorite international pastas from around the world, Sean, featuring mixed and match, create your own pasta platter. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what Hulk Hogan's favorite international pastas are. Well,
I am.
He likes angel hair. He likes shells, fettuccine, penne, and he also likes nuggets. Now, Sean, I have never had a pasta nugget before, and maybe that's probably because I'm not as international as Hulk Hogan is. Sauces? Do you want to talk about his favorite sauces? Marinara, marinara, Alfredo, pasta, garlic and pesto, garlic and oil, and white clam. Sean.
Wow.
International favorites for Hulk Hogan. And you could even check out his low-fat pasta specials. They're not on the menu because you have to go up to the counter and ask for them.
Interesting. You did your extra work.
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
You're welcome, Sean.
Because when it came to Pastamania, I in fact did not do my extra work. Now, Hulk Hogan would eventually have a grill. He would have the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Grill or something like that, and it didn't work. Well, how many failed businesses does Hulk Hogan have, or business ideas?
He's probably had, he's had a couple, I think.
I mean, every movie he's been in pretty much failed. When he was brought in as Dixie Carter's, basically, he helped ruin TNA. TNA went downhill big time when he was around. He may have single-handedly killed Tough Enough. R.I.P. Tough Enough. Let's see. Yeah, the Ultimate Grill did not work. He does have the Hogan's Beach Shop, but I think those are his in name only. I think other people own those, or at least own one of them. I know that he had his own energy drink, Sacco Energy, that did not work. There was Hulkster Burgers, which did not work.
There were Hulkster Burgers.
Yes.
How do you go from pasta to burgers, Sean? That doesn't make sense.
Well, because he's a traitor. Bobby Heenan was right all along. Duh. I know that he was a part of Visualist Science. He probably is going to bankrupt the American Diabetes Association because he was a spokesman for them at one point. I don't know, man. I don't know. Well, what I do know is that Sting versus Ric Flair was booked for this one. And I think it is very appropriate that Sting versus Ric Flair was on the first and the last Nitro.
Oh, absolutely. It's the perfect bookends. I mean, that's how it's the quintessential NWA/WCW feud. It makes absolute sense.
When they say WCW, first thing that pops in my head is Sting, Ric Flair. That's it.
It's just as simple as that. It's a clean cut.
We see a short, sweet inset promo from Sting. And then we hear Luger chants. Well, why is that? Because Lex Luger is out there. They pretend he's not a part of the show. He had wrestled in a tag team title match 2 days before this, Warren, teaming with Michaels against Owen and Yoko. He filmed a Superstars match against Mabel that was probably never intended to make air because he had been off TV, but definitely didn't now. But I would love to see them dig that up because I'm sure if it were a dark match at the Superstars taping, it exists.
Yeah, for sure.
And Lex Luger's out there. You want to talk about more setting the tone? Lex Luger sure did it.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as a surprise, you know, what is he doing here? Get him out of here! He's not supposed to be here. But when you consider the story, also, because all these stories are fantastic. You know how Eric Bischoff himself has, said that he wasn't really keen on signing Luger. It wasn't a big deal for him. Luger had been a failure in WWE and WWF. The heir apparent to Hulk Hogan just never took off. The Lex Express ended up crashing into oblivion. So for Bischoff, he said it multiple times, he wasn't a priority for him. And I would speculate that there are two reasons why Luger got the job. First of all, Sting. I'm pretty sure Luger was calling Sting for the past 12 months because we were in 95. I really think the Lex Express thing, it had all come to an end in 94. And I'm sure he was calling Sting and was like, man, is there any work for me up there, man? And down there, I need something to do. This is terrible what they're doing. So Sting probably had a lot to do with it. But then, we'll talk, when we get to the main event, it'll become more apparent. But, Vader was still in a program with Hogan, despite the fact that they were two baby faces at the time and they were both aligned against the Dungeon of Doom. They were still in a program together. And, the rumor was that Vader and Hogan was supposed to be the main event of the second Nitro. And we're supposed to set it up here and then move on to the second Nitro. But then Vader got in a fight with Paul Orndorff. Yeah. Like the week before the first Nitro. And he was
that ass beat.
Yeah, hell yeah.
In shower shoes.
So, Luger pops up. If you're Eric Bischoff and you're looking to make an impact, and Luger was maybe your lukewarm idea, now he's become suddenly quite hot now that Vader is out of the picture.
So this match, Sting hits a big press slam to start. Both guys spill outside on a Flair body press, but Sting press slams him again, back in the ring. I gave this one a 5.75 out of 10 for historical and just the chemistry, but this was a very redundant match in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was exactly like me playing Royal Rumble on the Sega Genesis, where I'm constantly spamming the gorilla press, because that's exactly what Sting was doing the entire time. I think he must have hit 4 or 5 presses throughout the match. And I mean, it's Flair, it's Sting, it's fine. And that's what it was. It was fine. It's a match we've seen that even at this point we had seen dozens of times before.
Sting was the perfect smart foil for all of Flair's crap, though.
Oh yeah,
just the right guy. We see the 7th press slam of this match, and Arn Anderson makes his way out to the ring.
Hang on. Arn Anderson comes out to the ring in a windbreaker.
He did break that wind, I'm sure. Probably because he had just been to Pastamania. Mongo tries really hard to prove he knows big words. A superplex from Sting, and Flair applies a figure 4. I'm not sure if they had agents for this show, but if they did bad because there were a lot of press slams. There were superplexes in back-to-back matches. Arn gets involved and stops the figure 4 and brawls with Ric Flair, and mayhem ensues. Because in the middle of this mess, Scott Norton just trots out, "Hey, you, Mongo McMichael, what do you do? I'll fight you." And I'm thinking, please do. But then Randy Savage shows up, and we get the corniest 1980s promo ever. "You want to fight Mongo? You got to fight me instead, yeah." And Scott's like, "I don't care. I just want to arm wrestle somebody. God damn." It's so bad. It's so bad. But,
It was, but in a very perfect mid 1990s way as well with all these guys. Scott Norton, I love that he came out looking for Bischoff, right? And he says, "I have a contract," and he's not just talking about having a contract. He has his contract in his hand, Sean. He came down to the ring clutching his contract. His fist is clenched around it. Like it's turning back into pulp. That's how hard he's clenching his contract right now, just to prove to Eric Bischoff he has a contract and he wants to fight. It was funny. It was just a funny moment.
It sure was. And the perception that I see put forth here is that WCW has no control over their own show. Luger showing up, Norton showing up, the announcers being accosted. Okay.
But at least Arn Anderson went back for his windbreaker after he was done beating people up.
That's true. We see a video for Sabu. Forgotten aspect of this show. I wonder how different things would have been, if any, if he would have just stuck with WCW. He would wrestle, I think, 4 times in WCW, 3 Nitro matches. He won a Halloween Havoc match. He never got beat outside of maybe a DQ. His total in-ring time was 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
Like his entire career in WWE.
Well, at least through this run, yeah. Because I'm pretty sure they were using old WCW footage of him for this vignette where he had appeared on a couple of tapings years before.
Well, you'd think so. But when it was a weird combination. It was strange to think of Sabu being thrown into the mix here, but I get it. I know what Eric Bischoff was trying to do, bring in these guys that are completely different to what we're typically seeing. But I mean, he didn't quite have the sheen yet that he would like in 2000. And he just felt a little out of place.
He certainly did. And, I would have liked to have seen him and Pillman, him and Liger, him and some of those people, but we didn't get that. What we did get was Michael Wall Street, also known as Mike Rotunda, later VK Wall Street, previously IRS. And boy, was this ever a $1 Million Man knockoff gimmick. They were just holding up a big sign saying, he used to be the IRS and he used to tag with Ted DiBiase. And the way that we're going to show you that is by applying glitter glue to his suit.
We'll put a dollar sign on his lapel here.
Glitter glue.
With glitter glue, exactly.
He even says, "I know the IRS will be watching." Oh, come on.
And he says something to the effect like, a lot of people are talking about the new generation, but it is really the few generation. And like,
I like that line.
I like that line too.
So here's what he would do. He had just jumped from WWF at the end of July. He'd go on to lose to Sting in a U.S. title match the next week before reeling off a 6-match Saturday night winning streak. He would not appear on a Nitro match again until May, would not win one until December 1996.
Holy smokes. That's a run. Good for him for jumping off that WWF ship. Good career move.
Probably was at that point because he stayed employed for a while. He got in the NWO.
That's true. You're right.
Hulk Hogan with Jimmy Hart defeated Big Bubba Rogers, the former Big Boss Man. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 10, although their WWF matches were pretty solid. I felt they had good chemistry in the WWF. Not necessarily here.
No, especially with Boss Man coming in and looking more like an insurance salesman than anything else. His ill-fitting suit, wrestling in suspenders.
Big Bubba does the old Sean Waltman crank headlock. And I've had people ask me to explain, because I had mentioned on other shows, why on a lot of low-level indie shows they discourage that. Okay, so I'll break that down here. WCW rings, WWF rings don't have this problem. New Japan, they are made with lumber. A lot of low-level indie rings that you see have plywood across them. So instead of pieces of lumber, and this isn't universal, but you'll have maybe 6 to 8 pieces of plywood, and that has a lot more give, and it also makes a lot more noise. So whenever you walk around, you hear the crashing of those boards, because a lot of times those boards have warped a little bit, and they will crash in between your feet, the mat, and the steel in which they're laying on. So usually when you're walking around, you get that sound a little bit. You want that sound associated with pain. You don't want that sound associated with walking around the ring or cranking away on a headlock. You want that sound associated with suplex, body slam, falling to the mat. So that's why a lot of times it's discouraged on plywood rings and things of that nature. But here, probably not so much. I get the feeling WCW had a pretty sturdy ring, even if they're using a hepatitis-infected ring mat that it looks like. That thing looked like it had AIDS. That thing was gross. Hogan turnbuckle smashes and punches Bubba, and then Bubba gouges his eyes and does a rope-hung senton. For some reason, Bubba goes after Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, because I don't understand. I really don't understand. And there's a bit of a dichotomy, actually, as far as, Hogan being a babyface here, because, not too long after Rogers goes after Hart, Hart is going to distract the ref while Hogan wraps Rogers' head in Jimmy Hart's jacket, and then will prop him up in the corner, and Hogan will mount him and punch him in the face while the ref is distracted. Now, if I were to be extremely generous and giving, I would say, wow, they're planting seeds of Hogan's turn in 1996 right here. They're slowly making him a heel. But no, I think I might be giving a little too much credit, and I'll keep that generosity for someone else who deserves it.
Yes. So Hogan saves Jimmy Hart by blinding Bubba with a flag. What a dick! Bubba gets a body slam and the boss man slam. Not a great looking one either. Hogan kicks at it too. Boot, leg drop, pin. This sucked.
Yeah, it was bad. We could talk about who else thought this match sucked? The guys on the hard cam, opposing the hard cam in the front row.
Oh,
the guys who were standing up and were booing, very visible thumbs downs to Hogan. And then later in the match, there was at some point in the match, they have signs. They pull out 2 signs. One sign that says Hogan sucks, and the other one says Hogan is a wimp. And
fantastic.
Both guys are trying as hard as they can. You can see him trying to start a Hogan sucks chant. And it stays on the hard cam for a while. Then all of a sudden, it cuts, and we don't go back to the hard cam at all. And when we do, both guys are sort of like leaning up against the barricade, and they're looking a little dejected, and they don't have their signs anymore, Sean.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
man.
That the sign, the sign.
Good.
Yeah, it started the sign censorship started very, very early in the Monday.
Oh, it sure did. So I loved what happened after this match. For as much criticism as I give the match, and it's Hulk Hogan wrestling a match on TV against a guy who, when people tune in, they're probably going to know who his opponent is. You don't have to say Big Boss Man, but they recognize the man. smart, savvy. I like that. I think it could have been somebody else, but hey, whatever. The Zodiac, Kamala, the rest of the dungeon hits the ring. Lex Luger makes the save. Now, if there's anything consistent about Lex, he doesn't like Hogan. And that's pretty consistent throughout everything. One of my favorite things from WCW from this point on was Lex Luger in general. Not the in-ring, but just him dipping his toes in and out of being a complete dick and him being a babyface. And I don't know that there were a lot of people that played that any better. You would see like him teaming with Sting, who was a babyface. And that's one of my favorite things, the heel babyface team. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want Sting to know he's a dick. So he's slapping hands. Then when Sting turns around, he's like, ugh, gross. But then he can get to situations like when he beat Hulk Hogan 2 years later and the crowd's going nuts. And this is a guy who couldn't fill Hogan's shoes in WWF. Couldn't do it. They have a standoff, and it's like WCW is literally capitalizing off of Hogan and the guy who WWF failed to have replace him. And Hogan and Luger get back-to-back, have this face-off. Sting and Savage come out to separate them. I thought that having only top guys involved in this made this seem way more important.
Yeah, absolutely. It just added to the drama of the situation. And don't forget, we're still off the impression that Lex Luger should not be there, right? So everything makes sense. And Sting hanging out with Luger, despite the fact that Hogan and Sting were buddies against the Dungeon of Doom, right? It just added to the realism of it, the reality of it.
Gene Okerlund is out and asked what's going on, and I love Luger's promo. He said that Hogan's WCW title was the one that matters. Bam, you put over the title. He said he's beaten the same people Hogan has and been the same places he's been, so you establish that Luger is on the level again, in case anybody forgot. Then there was a pretty solid burial of WWF. I got to give him credit. He's tired of playing with kids. He came to play with the big boys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I love this is where the big boys play things where they showed their wrestlers beating up WWF guys. I thought that was smart.
Yeah.
Why not?
It makes absolute sense. That's what they were going for. And that's what they were getting. That's what they built off here as well. I liked how Hogan at the same time, maybe a little more discreet burial here, but Hogan led Luger into his promo by saying, "What are you doing here, Luger? You've got no business in my backyard." Yeah. It's like, okay, all right, we get it. It's fantastic.
Hogan did, yeah, like you mentioned, Hogan did a little bit of that burial too. Says that, but then puts over Hogan. Says he knows all, or puts over Luger. Says he knows all about Luger, where he started, who he's beaten, what he's done. So that also portrays that Hulk Hogan, the world champion, the biggest person in WCW, the biggest star in wrestling, has had his eye on Lex Luger.
Right.
He was aware that Lex Luger was the man before, and he's aware that Lex Luger was supposed to fill his shoes. And I think that lended a lot of credibility to Lex Luger, perhaps at a time when he had lost, that Lex Luger had been in a tag team for the better part of that year with Davey Boy Smith in WWF.
That is correct. And you can be sure that Hogan was instructed to do that.
Sure.
But, I mean, why wouldn't you do that? I'm still convinced that Lex Luger was the plan B here. I'm sure that, take the same situation, replace Luger with Vader, and it still makes perfect sense. Historically, this will be remembered much more fondly as true shots being fired, but definitely Luger needed the rub because he was a failed experiment. He just left WWE in shame to a certain extent.
The next week on Nitro, we'll run through the quick results. They had a few dark matches on that show, but the next show saw Alex Wright beating Sabu by DQ because Sabu does what he does. Sting defeated our boy VK Wall Street in 4 minutes and 15 seconds in a U.S. title match. Randy Savage beat Scott Norton in 5 minutes and 39 seconds. And then you had Hulk Hogan defeating Lex Luger by DQ in 5.5 minutes. So you did see follow-ups. Everything on this show was a follow-up. Sabu made his debut. VK Wall Street showed up and fought Sting. You had the Savage Norton match. You had Hogan and Luger. There was a lot of good follow-up on that. So that I can't appreciate. Also, they had Fall Brawl, I think a week and a half after this, where you had a War Games match. Kamala, Ming, the Shark, and the Zodiac. I'm going to let you guess who they faced.
Let's see. Hulk Hogan?
Bam, you got it. That's the only person you need to guess. Luger, Savage, and Sting. You had Arn Anderson beating Ric Flair. You had Harlem Heat defeating Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater. You had DDP winning the TV title against the Renegade. You had Sergeant Craig Pittman beating Cobra, who would later on be the NWO Sting.
Right.
And then you had Johnny B. Bad beating Brian Pillman. And get this, a 29-minute United States top contender match.
30 minutes.
So that's
Mark Miro and Brian Pillman going almost 30 minutes. Holy crap.
Do you know what the dark match was?
No, I can't wait.
For the first Nitro.
I can't wait. Also,
there are varying, Wikipedia has the rating listed as 2.5. Cage Match has it at 2.9. It was American males, Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, defeating the stud stable of Bunkhouse Buck and Dirty Dick Slater. Do you think that Dirty Dick Slater's dick got dirty because he dicked around in the dirt?
You are the king of segues.
Or was it because Scotty Riggs and Marcus Alexander Bagwell knocked Dick's dick in the dirt? I got questions still. I'm supposed to be giving our viewers answers.
You know,
I got questions.
Maybe that's why the canvas was so dirty. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's all because of the dark match.
Man, the cage match rating for Nitro is a 7.35. I think that's fair. I think that's a good rating. This was a good wrestling show.
Yeah, it was. It was fun. And as far as as far as historical context goes, you can't get any more relevant than this. Just to sit down and watch what's happening. Of course, you're going to sit down if you watch Bubba Rogers and Hulk Hogan. You might cry a little. You'll be like, ugh, can this be over yet? But I mean, if you put everything in its context, you realize how much this moment is important to the business and how the Nitro that we grew to know, how true to its roots it stayed in all its execution. It's really phenomenal. You give a lot of shit to Eric Bischoff for a lot of stuff, but you cannot fault the guy for having a vision and holding on to that vision.
Now, this would lead we call January to WrestleMania the road to WrestleMania. They were kind of on the road to Starrcade, but man, you look at this. It was in Nashville, 8,200, and it was basically a New Japan versus WCW show. And these were a lot of people that were not on WCW TV. I wonder, and it's not something I found out, I wonder if they had the benefit of hindsight, if they would have booked Starrcade the way that they did, knowing that they were going to have national TV. Or maybe this was an effort. I know that the New Japan thing was an effort to make them seem more global because you wanted to eliminate the perception that they were only in Atlanta, only on Saturday nights, only dim, only gray and black and all this, the dingy look. And I'm sure that having Kensuke Sasaki and Tenzan and Masa Saito and Chono and people like that, Kanemoto on the show, helped that perception. But man, it seems like when you have the roster that you do, and I'm talking Ric Flair, Savage, Luger, Sting, Hogan, it seems like it should have been a major show. But then again, I don't know that we had major shows back then to the level that we do now.
Yeah, we're still about Starrcade. I mean, it's still. Yeah. It's still a major show. I mean, again, WWF wasn't doing that because it was a WCW versus New Japan thing. It was interesting. It was extremely different. The question that I have is, was the North American audience ready for such a for a show comprised of people that they just never saw before. You know what I mean? And maybe had they like you said, if they had taken the time to look back, would they had promoted this more? Would they have actually built to a get more people on the show, so on and so forth, and really build up to this extremely big moment? Because in hindsight, even today, it's hard to get these, Ring of Honor and New Japan do stuff together and we freak out, so back then, I just think maybe people weren't ready for that. But again, part of Eric Bischoff's vision of how WCW needed to improve, I got to give him 100% credit for that. He held on to that vision.
What will you remember most about this show? To me, it's got to be the Luger thing and how they closed the show. It had me wanting to know what happened on Nitro #2, even though it was 24, 25 years ago.
In my case, it's Mongo McMunkle.
He did suck so bad.
It was awful.
Guys, thank you all so much for joining us. Of course, follow Warren Hayes at Mr. Warren Hayes. He does a lot of great stuff here on Fightful Select. Let us know what you want to see next. And of course, if you subscribe to that champion level tier, not only can you recommend a show, you can, or not just recommend a show, you can straight up tell us to do one. Save up another month and you can appear on the show with me. I want to thank you guys so much. Until next time, we're out.